It all started as usual. Peppa and George were playing with Evie, Peppa's younger sister.
Evie, George, let's build the tallest tower,
Suggested Peppa. Suddenly, Evie started complaining about stomach pain.
Don't worry, I'll help.
Replied Mommy. Peppa and George looked at their sister with concern. Daddy Pig went to the kitchen for medicine. As he was about to return, suddenly the lights in the room went out.
Strange,
Said Daddy Pig. Suddenly, a huge black hand appeared from the darkness and grabbed him. When Daddy Pig didn't come back, Mommy Pig called Dr. Rabbit. She began examining her, but suddenly black, thin tentacles appeared from Evie's mouth.
Help!
Screamed Dr. Rabbit as Evie grabbed her and dragged her out of the nursery. Peppa and George watched in horror, unable to do anything. Meanwhile, Mommy Pig went down to the hall and stumbled upon a cocoon made of tentacles, in which Daddy Pig was barely visible. Suddenly, everything went dark again, and a second cocoon appeared nearby, this time with Mommy Pig inside. Now only Peppa and George remained in the nursery. No one could help them. They heard Evie's whisper approaching the door.
Evie?
Asked a frightened Peppa, looking toward the door. She appeared with a grim smile and completely black eyes, saying,
Now you are my toys.
Mummy Pig always told Peppa, don't play with your food. But tonight in the pitch-black kitchen, Peppa is playing. George draws with chalk. This is my friend, he whispers, pointing at the corner. But the room is empty, except for the horned shadow behind him. The bedroom light flickers. Peppa pretends to sleep outside the door. Daddy. But the silhouette is all wrong. Too tall, too thin. And why is there a knife gleaming in his hand? The postman stands facing the wall. In his hands, a letter. The envelope is damp. The words, do not open, glisten. But Peppa's hoof is already reaching for it. The TV in the living room buzzes with static. The reflection of Peppa walks toward it. But Peppa is asleep upstairs. Then the lights cut out. Silence. And their voices overlapping. You're one of us now. It was an ordinary day. Peppa saw a new game on Daddy Pig's computer called Coin Collection. She started collecting coins, and everything seemed fun and harmless. At first, Peppa enjoyed the game, but day by day, she became more absorbed and lost track of time. Soon, dark circles appeared under her eyes, and the joy disappeared. One sunny day, Mommy Pig was tidying up toys in the nursery. She hadn't seen Peppa for a while and decided to check on her. Mommy Pig entered the room to turn off the computer, but what she saw shocked her. Peppa was sitting in her chair with wires connected to her head.
Mom, I'm almost at the final level.
Peppa exclaimed, her eyes clouded. Mommy Pig rushed to disconnect the wires, but as soon as she reached for them, Peppa raised her hand. Another wire appeared out of nowhere and plunged into Mommy Pig's neck. Soon she found herself next to Peppa, absorbed in the screen. Meanwhile, George and Daddy Pig were watching a show about Mr. Potato in the living room. George asked where Peppa was. Daddy Pig shrugged. George decided to check what was happening in the room. He entered and saw Peppa and Mama connected to the computer. He stood there, overwhelmed with fear, but before he could do anything, a wire shot into his neck as well. He too fell under the influence of the game. Daddy Pig also grew bored, sitting alone in the room, so he went to call the family for an evening movie. He entered the room and saw that everyone was now playing. Deciding to stop this madness, he turned off the computer. However, the screen still flickered on. Suddenly, a wire shot forward and connected to Daddy Pig's neck. He froze. His eyes clouded over, and he too succumbed to the game. Suddenly, the lights went out. Now the entire family sat on the sofa in the living room with empty eyes. Wires protruded from their necks. The TV flickered ominously, showing a terrible grimace. It all started like any other day. Daddy Pig was fixing a floorboard. Peppa, George, and Evie watched. Evie stared into the gap, silent, unmoving, eyes too wide.
Don't go down there.
Daddy Pig said.
Just dust and spiders.
That night, Peppa woke up. Strange lights flickered under her door. She heard soft rustling. At the end of the hall, she saw Evie.
Peppa, we're waiting.
In the living room, the rug was gone. In its place, a gaping hole. She stepped closer. Creak, crack. A hand grabbed her. She was pulled under the floor, into darkness, cold, whispering, laughter. Then a warped version of Evie's song. Peppa trembled. Evie stood before her, but twisted, taller, eyes hollow.
You came to play.
She whispered. Peppa backed away, touched something. She turned and saw Daddy Pig. His eyes were glowing. She ran. Hands reached out. Faces flickered. Ahead was a light. It was the silhouette of Mummy Pig. She climbed toward the light, and suddenly a white flash. She gasped in bed. In her room, she looked around, panting. Everything looked normal. She exhaled, nervously smiled. But then she looked up. Evie was on the ceiling, smiling. Peppa and George spent the weekend at the country house. While their parents relaxed at home, they played in the garden.
George, let's go look for treasure.
They got carried away and dug too deep. Suddenly, they fell into some underground space. It resembled an underworld. Everything around exuded horror. Peppa and George walked along a dark corridor and emerged into a huge ritual hall. The room was lit by a red glow. Walls were draped with chains. Bones and skeletons lay scattered around, and in the center stood a table.
George, look! This must be a sacrificial altar.
Peppa, I think we should leave.
George muttered nervously.
Yes, right now.
Peppa said as if she had an idea, but George was already pulling her by the hand toward the exit. Suddenly, they realized they couldn't escape on their own.
Are we stuck here forever?
Don't cry. We'll figure something out.
Peppa said, and started calling for help. Their cries brought their parents running. They were furious, but helped the piglets get out. On the way home, Peppa enthusiastically told them about the ritual hall. Her excitement frightened George. Their parents just exchanged glances and laughed. That night, Peppa said,
George, I have something special.
She pulled a small bone from under her pillow. It was glowing with a bright green light.
Peppa, you're going to get into trouble.
George warned anxiously, but Peppa didn't listen and happily played with her find. Suddenly, the floor in the nursery cracked open into two parts, and from it emerged a gigantic skeleton with red eyes, a terrible smile, black claws, and red tentacles behind its back.
You stole my bone. You will pay for this.
It said in a demonic voice. The skeleton grabbed Peppa's hand and lifted her toward the ceiling. Meanwhile, Dad and Mom Pig were sitting in the living room reading books. Suddenly, Evie ran into the room.
Bear! Where is my bear, Mommy? Honey, he's probably lost again among your toys. Let's go find him.
Mommy Pig picked up Evie in her arms, and they headed to her room. When they opened the door, they froze in horror. Everything in the room was upside down. Walls were scratched with claws, and in the middle of the room hung Bear on a rope with black crosses instead of eyes.
My bear! Sweetheart, it's just some evil joke.
Mom said nervously. Suddenly, they heard wild screams from Peppa's and George's nursery. The room was in chaos. George was hanging in a net in the upper corner of the room with white eyes as if hypnotized. Peppa was standing against the wall with black eyes and a creepy smile. She was whispering some spell and scratching something on the wall with a bone. Dad Pig was lying on the floor and barely managed to say, "Run!" In the center stood an ominous skeleton. It turned toward the door and whispered in that same chilling demonic voice,
Oh, we have guests. You're just in time. I just finished with these little pigs.
A typical evening, tea, girlfriends. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. The light bulb suddenly began to flicker. The girls fell silent and looked up. The first alarm. The house had awakened. Susie began to tremble. The hum grew louder. The shadows became restless. The shadow beneath Susie's chair pulsed and darkened. Susie screamed, dropping her doll. Peppa grabbed Susie's hand. The shadow reached for Susie's leg. The kitchen turned into a trap. The girls ran into the living room. The room was quiet. The silence was deceptive. The couch's shadow melted onto the floor, turning into a flat black puddle. It slowly spread across the floor. From its center rose something, like a shapeless ink-blot tentacle. Susie stared in horror. Peppa recoiled. The puddle slid toward them, stretching. Peppa shoved Susie toward the hallway door, but escape was a lie. Darkness awaited them there too. A mass of wallpaper was already partly oozing down under the stairs. An eye on a tentacle stared at them. The Shadow Eater had seeped out of the living room. Peppa and Susie ran toward the staircase. The eater tried to cut them off, sliding along the wall. Susie nearly fell. The pounding of footsteps, heavy breathing, the rising sounds of monsters. Peppa pulled Susie into the nursery and slammed the door. Black liquid seeped from underneath. A message appeared on the wall. "We are in the walls." George was there too. Black film covered his mouth. His black eyes shot open. The darkness had already consumed him. George's shadow tore away from the wall, forming a new eater. Susie screamed in terror. Peppa spotted a flashlight on the dresser. Bright light! In the flashlight beam, the Shadow Eater recoiled, writhing as it slithered under the door. The wallpaper, a giant mass with eyes, was stuck to the outside window. The flashlight flickered wildly and died. A wet, slurping sound echoed in the dark. Suddenly, Peppa's face with black eyes. "Your house has consumed the light.